Now, a tapered needle, we offer a regular tapered needle. These are actually made for a different industry, but you can see, well, I hope you can see, these tapered needles, I can get that feather out of the way, they've got a hooked end, and they've got a fat shank that goes smaller, and then smaller again, until you get to a triangulated point, and this triangulated point actually has little barbs on it. Very tough to see, but they've got little triangulated barbs. In fact, if you put your finger down, you can feel it, very rough, okay? And a deadly point on the top. Now, a lot of tyers like to take pliers and just nip that tip right off, just in case. If you're new to tying, you will jab yourself a couple of times. Okay? Now, the other pin we offer is the large taper needle, and we had these custom made. These are egret large taper needles, and they are stainless steel, and they go from a 2mm gauge wire, stainless wire, and they're gradually tapered down into a dull point. Now, we specifically have the dull point made because we're tired of having bandages at our tying desk. Okay? But they both serve their different purposes. I'll show you how the big one works. So the large taper needle, this is perfect for Scandinavian, large Scandinavian tubes. It's also great for our regular plastic tubes and anything lined with our regular plastic or large Scandinavian. Basically anything lined with 1/8 tubing. So this is our large Scandinavian tubing, and it just goes, you can see a nice dull point, no problems. And I've melted the edge of both of these, or the edge of both sides of this tube, and you can see it slides right in. Okay, you don't have to put a lot of pressure, just a little bit. Now obviously I've got this way too far out from my vise, so if I start to tie, now I'm ready to go. And you can see, because of the taper, it all depends how hard you want to jam it into that taper. If you jam it in too hard, it won't come off. Or if you end up pulling it off, the whole pattern will fall apart. It's a fine line between getting it on there snugly and getting it on there, you know, too tight. Now, it's better to be a little bit loose. If it does start spinning, all you need to do is just grab the tube and push it in a little bit more. Okay? And then, of course, when you're finished your pattern, you can take it off without a lot of force. Sometimes you just use your fingernail from the back and kind of pop it off, and it's ready to go. Right, the small diameter taper pins, they work great for anything that uses our liner tube or small Scandinavian style plastic tubing, and they work great because of those barbs. Be mindful of the point though, deadly sharp. Now this is our regular plastic liner tube, or our Scandinavian small liner tube, or pardon me, small Scandinavian tubing. They're the same diameter, okay? So you can see when putting these on my vise or my taper pin, they simply slide in. Now it's those little, you can see as I poke it in, there's little resistance from every barb I hit. So those little micro barbs are what really hold the small diameter tubing in. And then of course, if they don't totally hold it in, there's the taper of the pin. When you push it in, eventually jams that tube onto it. And just like with the large diameter egret taper pins, you go too hard, it's going to stay on permanently maybe. So again, to get these off, just squeeze it with your fingernails, and it should come off right off the back. Okay, same thing with anything with our liner tube. Okay, goes on, the barbs kind of grab it, and then the taper really grabs it. So the small diameter tubes, or pardon me, the small diameter taper pins are definitely the way to go, especially, you know, if you're using a tube long enough where that barb or that point isn't exposed. If that point's not exposed, you're going to save yourself some grief. Alright, these small diameter tapered pins, we sell them in kits of 9. These are just the 3 different types. So within that kit of 9 you have 3 of each one of these. You have your longest, which is 4 inches long. Right? And you've got the quite a long triangulated barbed point, and then the taper. The next two are the same length. They're both 3.5 inches long. Let's see if I can show you here. So the bottom is the longest. But the next two, which are 3.5 inches long, you'll notice they have two different taper starting points. The smallest one has a really fine taper. That's for really small flies, small tubes. Taper starts about there. Still have the barbs though. The next one, you've got a longer triangulated point before the taper starts. And then of course the 4-inch one, which we just showed you, has the longest, we just size them up here, has the longest triangulated taper. So they come in a kit of 9 for 2 reasons. One thing is you can break them, it's possible. Also, we find a lot of guys ordering them for each other. I mean, you get a set of 9 and you've got you're in a tying club or something, you can share them around and everybody can get started on tubes. So that's the small diameter tapered kit. Again, 9 in total, 3 of each size. Good way to start out. Alright, our egret large diameter tapered pins, they come in a pack of 4, and you can see here, these are the 4 you get in your kit. And the longest one, quite long, good for really big saltwater stuff. And you'll notice if I just point all these points at the end, the taper starts at different lengths. Alright, our egret large diameter tapered pins, you can see they're quite big. The actual diameter of the wire is 2 millimeters, and then it tapers down, just as we mentioned before. These come in kits of 4, and you can see they're 4 different lengths. And also with the lengths, if I just point everything the same direction here, get all the points lined up, hopefully you can see this. Tough to hold all 4. Let's just do 2. Let's do the biggest and the smallest. If you line up the points there, you can see the taper on this pin starts way back here. The taper on the small pin starts way up here. So not only are you getting 4 lengths of pins, you're also getting 4 different taper lengths. It's a great tool to have, especially if you're doing larger stuff. A lot of customers ask us about muskie and pike flies, as well as large saltwater stuff like for tropical areas, even for Pacific salmon in the ocean. These are the ones you want to have.